Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Hashtag. And I'm really excited for this week's guest. We've got Rhyannon Boyd with us from Bath RUHX.
Yeah.
Rhyannon, do you want to explain what that organisation does, what you're all about, and what do you do?
So I'm Rhyannon Boyd, I'm head of RUHX. RUHX is the official NHS charity of the Royal United Hospitals in Bath, that's the RUH. Until last year we were known as the Forever Friends Appeal, but following a complete rename and rebrand, we have become RUHX. And the X really is to signify the extraordinary that we fund over and above what the NHS and the hospital is usually able to do, whether that's something like our Dyson Neonatal Intensive Care Unit or the amazing Dyson Cancer Centre that is about to open in November, I believe it is. We go over and above and provide extraordinary healthcare for people living in Bath and beyond.
I love it. I love the rebrand. Was there any other reason why you kind of wanted to go through a rebrand? Because like the Friends Forever appeal was quite well known, wasn't it? So it's always a bold choice when something's pretty set to kind of go through a brand update and a complete name change.
It really is, but we did a brand audit and we carried out research to check, and our awareness was okay, but actually what happened is a lot of people didn't really understand what we fully did.
Right.
A lot of people thought we were the children's charity.
Okay.
And about 80% of our supporters said that they thought it was time for a refresh and a rebrand.
Wow.
We were using the old Forever Friends bear, which people said, actually it's time for an update. And really at that point it's like, well, that really comes alongside needing to do a rename, and by going out to focus groups we tested a whole range of different names, and RUHX is where we landed, because I think people wanted us to be able to really demonstrate the ambition and purpose of the charity in a really easy way, and really wanted that connection with the RUH, which for those living in the Bath and the Wiltshire area do know, and Forever Friends Appeal didn't really connect necessarily to the RUH, which is obviously what we're here for.
Makes complete sense.
Yeah.
It makes complete sense. I love it, and I think it's done a great job. How long have you been in your role?
I've been in my role just over 3 years. I joined about 8 weeks before the pandemic.
Wow.
Which was quite an interesting time to take over a charity.
Yes.
And to sort of lead them through that, particularly an NHS one working within the hospitals. So that was a really interesting time for us.
Wow, okay. And what's your background? Where have you come from before you joined
I've worked in
team?
Other charities, national and local charities, for 25 years. So, it was my first time ever working within the NHS and an NHS charity. So a really interesting and very exciting time, and it's been a great challenge working for RUHX, taking us through the rebrand and all the changes, and obviously helping to meet the challenges of the pandemic as well.
Yeah. What do you think was the biggest challenge for the charity during the pandemic? I know the obvious for lots of charities, but how did you meet those head on?
I think there were two challenges for us. Of course, like many other charities, our events programme, much of our fundraising almost switched off.
Yeah.
Alongside that, we had overwhelming need to support staff wellbeing in very, very short space of time. We had an immensely generous community and business community that were donating all sorts of things. So sometimes the challenges were quite simply, what do we do with 5,000 Dunkin' Donuts that arrived, or things like how do we get those out to staff? Where on earth do we put 8,000 Easter eggs, that sort of thing. To how are we going to support staff trauma recovery post-pandemic and things like that. So, and also for me, my team weren't used to home working.
Of course,
set up for homework. Like so many organisations, I'd been lucky. My previous work, I had a remote team, so it was about transitioning the team to working in that hybrid way as well. And so many different things, but some really great memories as well of how wonderful the community came together to support the RUH.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that was for me one of the highlights during that time, watching communities come together. And actually what's come out of the last couple of years actually is a greater sense of purpose for a lot of people, and also putting community at the forefront of decision making, particularly in the business community. And I think the kind of ethical consumerism journey that most of us are on, and it was kind of being ignored before, but I think the pandemic has really pushed forward that need to support causes that we care about, buy from people that are ethical and sustainable and have authentic causes about them, and are not just, ticking a box to say that they give X amount of money to charity a year. Actually, it's fundamentally at their core.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we also learned was that it was really important. The business community supported us during the pandemic. So when we decided to do the rebrand, we chose local agencies, local businesses to support us in that process.
Nice.
Because we want to support our local business community as well where we can. So our preference is always to work with local Bath and Wiltshire based companies where possible, because they support us. It's their hospital.
Yeah.
We know that if we've got money that we need to spend on a supplier, we will work with them, and that's so important.
Yeah, definitely. How big's your team?
My team is about 15 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's huge.
It is quite.
Yeah.
So I guess for a lot of the charities in this area, that would be quite a big team.
But for some, that's not. Yeah, it's not as big as others that are around.
No.
So how's the team broken up then? Do you have specialisms? Are you more like, is it events versus comms? How does it?
Yeah, so we have an events and community team. We have a Marcoms team of 1.5.
Nice.
Part-time staff.
Yeah.
We have a legacies and gifts in will sort of team of 1 and 2. We also have a partnerships team working with high net worth individuals, corporates and trusts.
Nice.
And then we have sort of our individual giving and our supporter care and our sort of finance sort of side as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there I'm working
over all of them. Wow. And that must keep you busy.
It does, but it's a really varied job, and I think that's what I really love about it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so that's kind of the background, and now we're here on a social media podcast, obviously.
Yes.
And one of the things that we always ask our guests is, what is your relationship like personally with social media?
A lot less than it used to be, I have to be
Yeah.
honest. I think I used to, post lots to Instagram, post lots to Facebook, but in recent years I've really just only posted essential things that I want to share. So I don't actually use it that much.
Yeah.
I've taken the apps off my phone and I just go and have a look at them as and when I feel I want to, rather than constantly scrolling through.
It's a really good bit of advice for anybody who thinks they're overusing social media.
I definitely was. So they're still fantastic, for sharing in certain groups and information. So, for example, my son does amateur dramatics, and so all the information is shared in those groups. So, of course, it still is really useful.
Yeah.
I love to check in on different charities and different organisations, but I proactively go and do that now rather than just scrolling through my phone at the things I don't want to see.
I think that's a really good how you've kind of positioned that in terms of proactively using it. I was just speaking to somebody earlier today actually, and they said something very similar about their kind of shift in usage for social is about a proactive approach. So they go on there when they need something or want to physically do something, like share into groups or hear from communities or check in on somebody that they know, as opposed to that automatic behaviour that was probably ingrained in a lot of us, which is if you sat there doing nothing, pick up your phone and scroll. You don't know why you're doing it. It's just that need to do it. And I think that's probably a shift demographically anyway, in terms of our age range. I think a lot of younger people, probably not so much, but I think that it's definitely becoming a cyclical thing. It's all coming back around to actually, as and when I need to use it, I will.
Absolutely. And I think you sort of see that in sort of the engagement as well in the social media sort of channels. I think seeing people who, I don't think you're getting quite as many likes sometimes as you were on some things, because I think people aren't just scrolling through, and it's not just about likes, is it? It's about how people are sharing stuff and engaging with you, and are they clicking through?
Yes.
And not relying totally on digital, I think, what we've learned as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a really good lesson. Do expand on that. I think that's really, really important, because it is beyond the hashtag. So it's not just about using the right hashtags and how many am I using. It's actually about the meaningful engagement and that it sits in part of a bigger picture. So yeah, expand on that. That'd be great.
Expand on that. So I think as an organisation, we talk to people on many different channels. So yes, we do talk to people on our social media channels, so that's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn. But we also still produce a hard copy magazine, which was rebranded. So it's called RUH Extra, and it's out in the hospital. It's posted direct mail out to supporters. And it's actually been really successful since our rebrand, so we're actually having to print more of them.
Wow.
I know. So you would think in a time when actually is there really a need for producing something like, shouldn't it just be 100% digital? Actually for us, no. We have an audience that like to receive it, that like to pick it up when they're in the waiting rooms of the hospital, and like to read it. So it's really important to have, I think, that mixture of channels. Of course, many of it directs to our website, so it is linked in with our digital, but actually for us as an organisation, it's really important to have that sort of channel to communicate with our supporters. It's all about the impact that we're making.
Yeah, love that. I think it's such a good lesson. It's not just, we have conversations with businesses where they're putting all their eggs in social media because they think that's going to be the only thing that's going to drive the impact and create the conversions. But it's not actually. It's about how do all these things intertwine. So as you say, using offline publications to say, go to our website to look at this, but also knowing how the website can push people the other way to sign up to paper docs and emails and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly with our events programme, we during the pandemic we were great on virtual and digital and recruitment, but now people are back out in the community. Now we've got visitors in the hospital. It's really important that we have, some of those banners out in the community. We have our posters out in the community, as well as the digital acquisition that we're doing, because we know that people will see things in lots of different channels.
Yeah.
And, it might not be the first time that they see it. It might be the third time that they actually take that action. So it's really important that when we do marketing strategies, we're looking at both on and offline.
Nice. That's a really good tip. Thank you so much. So in terms of social then, for the charity, how big a part does it have to play? And how well does it work for you in terms of strategy? Like, where does it fit?
It's a really important part of our strategy as part of acquiring supporters, whether that's people that are signing up to receive our sort of e-news, or whether they're signing up to give individual gifts. It is such an important way of communicating and engaging with our different audiences. And we do have a strategy that we have developed alongside our rebrand, because when we did a rebrand, we did a new website.
Cool.
And then we did a social media strategy that sat alongside that. Because I think prior to that, it's sort of, we had lots of different people in the team were contributing to content, but were putting content up, and it wasn't cohesive. There wasn't a tone of voice. The brand looked, if you looked at our feeds, they didn't necessarily look all our brand.
Yeah.
And there was content that was going up that also wasn't engaging, and we weren't really looking at the analytics. So our strategy now is about 3 pillars, which is around sharing more community and impact is one of those really important pillars, where we tell the people the why and the how, and what's happening with the money, which we weren't doing a huge amount of.
People don't know that. I have worked with a lot of charities over the years of starting up, and we as a company, as we started to grow. But I remember this is the first thing I look at, and I'm surprised by how so little stories are told, and the why behind it isn't shared. Why do we need the money? What's it going to be doing? What's the impact?
Yeah.
People focus on the ask a lot, don't they?
Yes, ours was, when I began, ours was very focused on the ask, and was also very focused on celebrating, which I think is important, people who donated money. But quite often people who had donated very large sums of money or raised large sums of money, which is great. But I think what we do now is we celebrate whether it's somebody who's just raised a small amount, because for them that's a lot of money. That's really important, and we want people to be able to identify with all the different sorts of people that fundraise for us or donate to us, and it's not all just about companies, it's not all just about big trusts, it's about the whole community. I always say to people, the Dyson Cancer Centre, it's been 10 years of fundraising, and yes, we've received some very big gifts, but actually we received 11,000 gifts.
Wow.
11,000 people have donated to that.
Yes.
Every single one of them is really important.
Yeah.
So we want our social media feeds to speak to each and every single one of those people, which I think is really important. So we do celebrate what we call our heroes, those sort of people.
Okay.
And then we have our asks is our final pillar. It's like, do more, take action,
Yeah.
do something, whatever it is that we might be asking. So it might be a financial ask, it might be sign up to an event or become a volunteer or an ambassador or something like that.
Yeah.
But we're making sure that when we plan our content, which is usually done a month ahead as a whole team,
Nice.
that we're making sure that all of those pillars of our strategy has got some content in them. And then plan so that we don't have 3 posts going out one day and then nothing for a week.
Perfect.
So
You've got it nailed, Rhiannon. Nailed. So inspirational. I love it. Could have said it better myself.
I know. And then we do that all via a sort of scheduling. So we use Heyorka.
Okay, cool.
So that everything that goes out, somebody checks that it's on brand and tone of voice.
Nice. Yeah.
Just to make
Hugely
sure.
important.
Very important when you've invested so much in a new brand and tone of voice.
Yeah.
You want everything to be going out and you're sounding like the same organisation through every post.
No,
So,
that's
yeah.
fantastic. So what sort of percentages do you delve up the 3 content pillars? Do you have any sort of approach to that, or?
We try to be relatively balanced across the 3, but sometimes some months there might be a bit more of one than the other, depending on what's going out. We've also learned that, we do quite a lot of Facebook advertising, Insta advertising, and that's scheduled slightly separately because, of course, that's not in our main feeds.
Yeah.
So there might be a lot more of those going out. It's all about balance, really, and about making sure we're definitely telling the why enough.
Yeah.
And making sure we're gathering that content, which actually can be quite hard in our hospital to
Yeah.
gather because patient stories are usually confidential.
Yes.
Staff are really busy.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge, but we we
Yeah.
do get that information and those stories out.
I can imagine that those types of posts doing the best. Is that fair to say, or?
Yeah, I think one of my favourite campaigns was a couple of Christmases ago. So the first Christmas after the pandemic, we did our Hospital Heroes campaign where every single day of December we shared a different staff story.
Wow.
So we had a photographer come in and take pictures of each of the members of staff, and every day we shared their story, and that just so engaging.
Wow.
People just really loved that.
I bet, because it's people, isn't it? And it's relatable,
yeah.
and you're starting to see those behind the service and the charity and the why, what you're doing it for.
Yeah, and we asked each of those members of staff just to tell about something about themselves and what they enjoyed about their job. And we learnt so much about how staff had been going above and beyond. I remember one of the senior sisters telling me that she made sure that no patient in her ward, unfortunately, they did have COVID patients who were dying and we couldn't have visitors. And she said that staff were coming in to make sure that nobody was alone at those difficult times. And when you're hearing those stories going out, and you're listening to them, you're just realising how inspirational the staff were.
Yeah.
And you wanted to tell their stories.
Absolutely.
And then, hearing about what they were missing. I remember one of the senior sisters of the critical care, so she was missing Glastonbury. She goes every year and she couldn't wait to get back to live music. And it just brings people alive.
Yeah.
They're more than a nurse or a doctor or a cleaner or a porter or all
Yes.
the different people that work within the hospital. They are humans behind it.
Yeah.
So,
Perfect. I love that. You summed it up beautifully. I think that's so important to share that message, particularly in the NHS, is, they are, everyone's an individual and people buy from people, don't they? So if they can have that connection with you,
yeah.
and social media is one of the best ways to be able to do that, I think.
Yeah, so when we do share staff stories, we usually get some really great engagement, or we share staff pictures or volunteers' pictures and stuff. Then we usually get great engagement, even if it's just the member of staff in their department.
Nice.
So it's really good.
Nice. And you talked about planning.
Yes.
So I'm a sucker for a plan. Love to plan, obviously. But I think some smaller charities would find that quite difficult to do or wouldn't know where to begin. So if you've got any tips or guidance that you can share for any smaller sized charities who perhaps don't have as many staff as you do, as big a team, how do they go about planning productively?
I think even with a team our size, carving out the time to get the content is something we have to share across the whole team, because actually not one person can do it. So first of all, we think about it for over a month in advance. So at the beginning of this month, we'd be looking at sort of the next month and what is it we're wanting to do. We've got that clear strategy of the 3 pillars that we're looking for. And then we have certain things like on Fridays or once a month we might celebrate as like a particular hero on a particular day, so we then decide who the hero of the month is or things like that. So we'll know some of that content. We'll also know things like awareness days, so if it's sort of World Cancer Day or something like that, we'll know that we want to put some content about that. So we'll put all of that into sort of it's just very simple, like looks like a calendar.
Cool.
And then we'll start to plot out the different content, making sure, as say, that we meet each of our 3 pillars, and then decide who is responsible for gathering the content of that.
Cool.
So within the team, not one person is going to have to do the whole thing, which I think is really important. And then alongside that, we're also looking at any of the adverts that might be going out, particularly for individual giving and events and community. But we're also looking at what our other comms are going to be. So are we sending emails out? And making sure that we've not got one week where we're sending 6 emails and nothing then for 3 weeks. We're just planning out all that content, because nobody wants to be overloaded in their content. So yeah, we sort of plan all of that out, and who's doing what, who's responsible, knowing within our team which team or which individuals are responsible.
And actually that ends up saving you more time, doesn't it? Because you've thought well ahead in advance. You've then got time to go and gather what you need to make those posts come to fruition, as opposed to suddenly going like, what are we doing this week? Oh my God. And like everything's just scattergun approach. Actually, that probably takes up more time.
It does. And I think when we do realise we've got gaps in content, that enables us as a team to sit down and go, right, have we got good stories? Anyone heard a good story? Has anybody spoken to any great staff recently that would be willing to share something? And then we can usually put our heads together and come up with some ideas to share that content where it's difficult, rather than one person sat there going, what do I do this month?
And how do you fit in like not run of the mill kind of sporadic content? Because there's inevitably going to be times when you can be really planned and then something drop of a hat happens, crisis or not, positive or not. How do you adapt to those scenarios?
I think we learnt very much in COVID, where a lot of it was very reactive, where we sort of again spread that across the team, so certain numbers of the team can access immediately to post if they need to, or if we're at an event over a weekend, we'll make sure that somebody has access to the channels that weekend so that we can be posting. So for example, the most recent example was obviously the death of Her Majesty the Queen, and everybody was putting content out. That was myself and the deputy and the comms manager just late that afternoon, evening, making the decision about what are we going to put out, what are we going to do, what are we going to switch off, because we had some campaigns going out that needed to be switched off and all that, and we were just able to just get on it because we're a small enough team to be able to just do that.
So you had that escalation procedure almost, and also because I find when you've got it all planned ahead, you've got the time to be able to say, as you mentioned, like, what can we bump over to here? What's no longer priority? What could we just shove through to next week? Or
what needs switching off? Do we know how long that campaign, that advert was meant to be running? When can we run it again? All of those things. Because as an NHS organisation, we couldn't put anything out for 10 days, I think it was.
That's right.
So,
all you had to do was pull stuff, and that was it.
But then it was like, when do we plan it? So just making sure because we knew what was meant to be out, and because our scheduler HUHX could show us, it enabled us to pull everything very quickly.
Nice. So little plug for HUHX there. One of the channels I'm aware of, we never use. I don't use it. We use Hootsuite and Plannable and other things. What features does HUHX have that can support charities in their social management?
The main use for us was that it allows this approval process. So whereas Hootsuite people could schedule, you didn't have that ability to necessarily go, yes, that one's okay. And when we've got a large organisation, we wanted to have a level of brand approval on the posts going out. So that was the main one. But I think the team also was finding Hootsuite wasn't quite as easy to navigate for them as they wanted.
Yeah.
HUHX working better for us. But
Nice.
I think what we do is we just constantly look to see which is the best scheduling tool. And
you've always got to adapt, haven't you?
Yeah,
I mean, we were
absolutely.
using Hootsuite for years just because it's the first one that was created that I was born onto into social media when I first started in the industry. But yeah, a couple of years ago, it was a case of actually it's not working anymore for us. So what do we want? And asking yourself, what is it that you need? Whether that be multiple people having access to your accounts or multiple accounts attached to one feed or the approvals process. I think that's probably what you need to ask yourself first and foremost, isn't it? And then go out and find something that's going to work for you.
Absolutely. So that's why we changed, because we wanted something that met our needs then.
Yeah. What sort of impact have you seen from social media directly? Are you able to trace that for the charity?
I think the impact that we can see is for us financially. Obviously, I think that is one big one, in that, you know, through things like COVID pandemic, through our events programs, we've been able to raise funds to support the hospital. But also we're able to reach out across the whole community, and whether that's patients, families, companies, organisations, people know about us and are able to support us in that way. And a lot of families who maybe have lost loved ones, we also find through social media, are able to raise money in memory of their loved ones that then comes towards the hospital, and that then enables them to share in their sort of journey, which I think is, for me, always quite inspirational to see that families who are using social media in that way, who may have set up a Just Giving page for us to benefit us, are using social media to really raise sometimes huge amounts of money to benefit the hospital, having lost a loved one. Yeah.
Do you see much, one channel over another driving the most deliverables for you, the most impact?
Facebook has always been our biggest channel, I think. We've found Twitter is definitely waning right now, and is quite good for talking to other sort of organisations, or some of our staff are on Twitter, but less for engaging with the wider community. And LinkedIn is always great for engaging with the business community. So I think what we've learned is that you do have to you're speaking to different audiences. When I first joined, it was the same message going out on every single channel, which, you know, wasn't really working. So you just have to really speak to your audiences. And Instagram is growing, I think, absolutely.
Yeah. Nice. That was a really good lesson there you shared in terms of knowing who's on what channel and tailoring your message. I think it's too tempting, isn't it? And we've done it before ourselves, but, you know, to share the same thing across everywhere because it's easier or because it saves time, but actually everybody's different and you have to tailor your message. What other lessons are you happy to share in terms of highlight lessons for people who are just starting out on their social journey, perhaps?
That you don't need to put huge amounts of money or effort into slick videos, that sometimes it's those slightly less slick but just very basic sort of video content that can really engage people. We found that through the pandemic. We find that now sometimes if we're just sharing videos of whether it's again staff or things that we're doing, that we can get some really great engagement, and they don't have to be the best quality, definitely, which I think is really, really important. It's just about engaging content.
Nice. Summed up beautifully, Rhiannon. We have come to the end of our podcast episode. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to chat to you. Before we finish, it's time for one of my favourite parts of the show. It's time for the social media fail. So, Rhiannon, tell us about the social media fail you've picked for this episode.
So I chose the Twitter spat with Transport for London. The Transport for London were forced to apologise for a very unhelpful tweet sent from its official Twitter account, which told a disgruntled passenger to leave early after he complained about being late.
I can't believe that.
I know, I couldn't quite believe it. And TfL said they were looking into the circumstances around the message. It just smacked as a massive fail, isn't it, really?
I know. Do you know what I was thinking? Like, do we think do we commend them more for keeping that response and trying to own it by saying apologies for the response you received earlier? I don't think it was meant to come across like that. I'll get this looked into. Or do you think they should have deleted the leave early, you will not be late next time, hope this helps? Which for me felt like was like a disgruntled employee or somebody tweeting that shouldn't have been off the TfL account.
I can imagine that the staff dealing with these comments can get really disgruntled at time because they're probably getting a barrage of abuse. But it just is a reminder sometimes to step away and to think about your response rather than just firing it off.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely what that one smacks me. Someone fired it off and probably didn't really
tweak it.
Yeah, I think, how's that going to be received?
Yeah.
Lo and behold, of course, not very well.
No, I know. What do you say? How dare you answer like that?
Yeah.
Which I would say the same probably. How dare you answer like that? That's not a good enough answer.
I know. And, I know you're trying to be helpful with suggestions to the customer, but actually your trains being on time is probably more important.
Yeah.
Apologising for that. I think we all get, at times, disgruntled customers, supporters, people on our feeds. And it's just treating them with kindness and respect, and often giving them an opportunity to give you a call or to drop you an email to have a private conversation if needs be, where you can't be easily sort of apologised for online when it's a bit more complicated. I think
that's the lesson. Oh, well, I hope that person is still employed by the London Overground team. But well done for pulling it back with the authentic response about recognising that it probably wasn't meant to be sent like that. I have a feeling, I wonder whether it was somebody who responded that should have switched over onto their different account and not TfL, but that's me being cynical. Either way, it was wrong. And either way, I think they owned it towards the end. But as you say, when it's customer service like this, always empathise.
Absolutely.
Always empathise. And like you said, step away for a couple of minutes before you tap out that response and always get it checked.
Yeah.
Rhyannon, thank you so much for your time. Wishing you all the best and look forward to seeing Bath RUHX evolve.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.